I am in Bloomfield, New Mexico at the Salmon Ruins and Museum. The last time I was here, it was just before the COVID-19 pandemic, and so this place has been closed for about a year now, but they've recently reopened, and it is a very cool Puebloan site and museum, so let's go check it out. And I've already stepped on some cacti. This is gonna be good. Here is the official state historical marker for the Salmon Ruins. And first, we're going to head into the museum before viewing the ruins. They have some very detailed exhibits in here, and they do currently have a strict mask policy, but at least they're open. The main museum room is like a giant hoe gun, and there's some really great and in-depth exhibits in here. The Salmon Pueblo, along with the nearby Aztec Pueblo, were both colonized and significantly influenced by the Chaco culture, which was based about 60 miles south of here in Chaco Canyon. The Chacoans there built the most advanced Puebloan society and developed the Chacoan roads to trade with regional pueblos such as the one here at Salmon. The Salmon Ruin or Salmon Pueblo, which is not named after salmon fish, was constructed with bonito phase masonry methods that were being used at Chaco Canyon around the same time, with veneers of shaped sandstone blocks laid on either side of a rubble core and bonded together with adobe mortar. This display features some local flora the locals had to work with. They also hunted animals with bows and arrows. They would hunt rabbits, prairie dogs, pocket gophers, deer, geese, sandhill cranes, and Colorado squawfish. And they would use just about every part of the animal. Animal bones work great as tools. There's some awls found at these ruins. Bones could also serve as weaving tools and end scrapers. Here are replicas of some big spears, including an atlatl and dart main shaft, often used for hunting more sizable animals, or people if need be. Here's an authentic Puebloan mug, pitcher, kiva jar, and ladle. This display features a canteen and some effigy vessels. And here are some more jars, a couple pitchers, and some olas used for irrigating crops. Salmon Pueblo and Chaco Canyon were connected to a larger series of trade networks across the southwest in Mexico, so some artifacts like seashells from the Pacific and Gulf of Mexico have been found here. The people here used a lot of local plants and grasses to make their clothing, done through a process of manipulating the fibers of yuccas and other plants. And there are some manos, stone tools used to grind food by hand. Cotton arrived in this region around 1100, so cotton was available here, and raw cotton balls and cloth were highly sought after in trade. The Puebloans did a lot of rock art in this region. There aren't really any authentic examples in the Pueblo ruins here, but people would carve petroglyphs and pictographs into nearby rock formations. They would also make some carvings out of big rocks. This looks like the back of a dog or some other four-legged animal. And this carving is known as the lizard woman or a lizard fetish, and it was found on the burned floor of the Tower Kiva here at Salmon. These are chamahilas, which are basically stone hoes. They were produced by specialists somewhere else and brought to Salmon Pueblo, and they were generally used for ceremonies. This case contains various flake stone implements made of rocks and minerals that would be used as tools by the Salmon people, like obsidian shards. There's also a very nice doggo here at the museum. What a good boy. The Puebloans did have dogs and other domesticated pets here at Salmon Pueblo, including macaws from Mexico for their pretty feathers. They actually excavated a well-preserved macaw skeleton here at this Pueblo, revealing that they were likely locked up in a room and died of malnutrition because they didn't get any sunlight. Here's a layer of the trash mound found in the dead macaw room. People dump their trash in there, so this is a mixture of bone, ash, charcoal, broken pottery shards, and corn cobs. The Puebloans, also known as the Anasazi, wore lots of ornaments and decorations. Here's some authentic necklaces and earrings, largely composed of shell beads. The roofs at Salmon Pueblo look like this, composed of wooden vigas for bottom support, then latilas, and willow and juniper bark. They later found out that method was very susceptible to fires. By 1300, The Puebloans abandoned this entire region, including Salmon Pueblo. They mostly moved farther south or further west, and there were a lot of reasons for the mass exodus, such as the changing climate and droughts, the growing populations, and raiders from the north. And here's some pottery shards of the Dinétah, or the Navajo, the people who later lived in this region. Then in 1876, a man named Peter Milton Salmon emigrated from Indiana to this property. He was one of the first white settlers in the region. At first he didn't know it, but he was farming right next to the remains of an ancient village. When the family uncovered it and realized what it was, they did help protect it from relic hunters. Here's a cross section of a wooden viga beam, and here you can match up the dating rings of the wood. They also have a magnifying glass that allows for closer inspection of some artifacts, like pottery shards, tools, and even seeds. There's some pigweed seeds. This exhibit features some Puebloan style ladders, and a recreated cliff alcove where people would stash some of their pottery or other junk. This was a common practice all around here, as there were lots of available canyon walls. Here's some more Anasazi pottery remnants. And this is the largest jug or vessel, still largely left intact. It's in really great shape for its age. This case contains very old pottery from other Four Corners cultures, such as the Hopi, Zuni, and Casas Grandes. Here's an appreciation exhibit for the stewards of this ruin and other local sites. There are people who help to protect the sites from vandalism, which does sometimes happen unfortunately. These are authentic pictograph sections that had to be removed when a man vandalized them and tried to steal them. He did go to jail. Here are some great examples of pottery by the Casas Grandes in Arizona. And these are some aerial photos of the Salmon ruins. They do also have a gift shop, with lots of local Navajo crafts and figurines like cocopelis. Now let's head outside. From the museum, there's a great overview of the complex and the scenery to the east. There is a series of canyons and mesas over there across the San Juan River Valley, including the prominent Angel Peak at nearly 7,000 feet. Now we'll finally walk over to view the Salmon ruins. Migrants from Chaco Canyon arrived here and began construction of this pueblo between 1088 and 1090 CE, along with the help of some local people that basically assimilated into the culture. After the Chacoans that built the pueblo passed on, the ancestral Puebloans from this region moved in around the 1120s and did some modifications to the place. They lived here until about the 1280s. Here's an unusually long and narrow room. Archaeologists don't know what this room would have been used for, but it's nicknamed the bowling alley. Here's a surviving window or vent with its original vigas. When the first full-scale archaeological excavation of this place occurred in the 1970s, lots of valuable and revealing artifacts were discovered in this room. This is the first of many kivas around the complex. The pueblo was very sizable. It used to have nearly 300 rooms, and some sections were about 3 stories tall. Obviously, most of the upper floors collapsed over time. The Chacoans originally built this room in a square shape, but the ancestral Puebloans turned it into a round kiva. If you look closely, you can see an original wood viga piece, but there's actually a mural around it in the stonework. Notice the different coloration of the rocks around it. That's a Puebloan mural. This wall has quite a few holes. Those are intact garbage chutes where they toss their garbage. Apparently they didn't clean it out too often. This site is unique because it is home to some peacocks for some reason. Look at that colorful peacock. I have no idea why they live here, but that's cool. These rooms were connected with a masonry staircase, which was very uncommon for the Puebloans, and the rooms were used for milling. I am currently standing on a surviving section of the second floor. There's some good views of the complex from up here. As I mentioned, the Chacoans didn't build too many kivas here. This was one of the first rooms to be converted into a kiva around 1120, and visitors can actually walk down into this one. Important ceremonies used to be held in here 900 years ago. Now the chamber has accumulated a bunch of tumbleweed. The kivas served as subterranean religious and ceremonial centers for the community. Looking down into this room, you can see plenty of authentic vigas and latillas. These rooms used to serve as buttresses to support the Great Tower Kiva, kinda like the buttresses the great Gothic cathedrals of Europe had, which were being built around the same time. This room used to have an altar set up in a particular way, which was a very unique and curious find for the archaeologists. Here's a closer look at the Bonito phase veneer masonry, similar to the composition of Pueblo Bonito at Chaco Canyon, which I do have a video on if you want to check that out. That place is incredible. The intricate nature of this pre-planned masonry really shows a sophisticated knowledge of building skills by the Puebloans. For whatever reason, archaeologists found a lot of organic materials well preserved in this room, such as string and rope made of yucca fibers, along with some baskets and sandals. Back up on the remains of the second floor, this room was likely where people made stone tools and socialized. And up here are the remains of the elevated tower kiva, an original feature built in 1088. The rest of the Pueblo complex was likely built around this large room, and it used to be several stories tall, so it required a lot of support from the buttress wall shown earlier. They do have a recreated ladder. That is how people would usually enter and exit through a smoke hole on the roof. On the floor are the remains of the hearth, where ceremonial fires were held. Most of Tower Kiva was intentionally destroyed in the 1280s when the Puebloans abandoned the place. They set fire to it, and apparently 21 children and some adults were cremated on the roof of the Tower Kiva during the fire. I guess that was a common ritual when they abandoned their village. These rooms were likely used by the Chacoans for cooking, as evidence of maize was discovered in these narrow chambers. This room was where they butchered their animals. That section of the wall is also very weird. I guess the roof in this room did catch fire a couple times, so that may be why. Here is yet another kiva complex at the end of the plaza. Here is the ventilation shaft of the kiva. I imagine it could get very hot down there when lots of people were gathered around the fire. Well, these are some pretty incredible ruins. Within the Pueblo Plaza is the Great Kiva. This one is definitely unlike most in the region, as it was initially built by the Chacoans, so it very much resembles the Great Kiva at Casa Rinconada in Chaco Canyon, and the reconstructed Great Kiva at Aztec ruins. Make sure to check out my videos on both those sites if you're interested. Due to erosion issues, the Great Kiva here has been largely filled in, so you can't see too much, but this one really was the political and religious center of Salmon Pueblo. And there's the peacocks again. They're not people friendly and always run away before I can get a good shot. But there he is off in the distance. There's also some cows right next to this historic site. What a fantastic place! This was a village where people lived their lives over 900 years ago. Nearby is the Salmon Homestead. This was the little home built by George Salmon in 1898. This is one of the oldest homesteads in the region, and was very luxurious compared to most log cabins around here. It is built of adobe and vertical logs, similar to methods the Puebloans developed 1,000 years ago. There's an antique carriage out front. The home is not open to tour, but I can do some creepy window peeking and show the inside. It does appear to be largely restored and filled with antiques. There's a grindstone along with lots of saddles and harnesses in here. There's the kitchen with its old stove. And these are the remains of their sod carriage house. Here is the Salmon's root cellar, where they would preserve the food in this desert climate. The Salmons also built this bunkhouse, which was likely used as extra sleeping quarters or storage space. Yeah, I bet it was fun to live in here. There is also a heritage park on the grounds, which features reproduction of historical Native American dwelling styles and other reminders of the past. Here is a sweat lodge, which were built for sweaty spiritual ceremonies. They got very hot in there. Here is a Vajo Hoe Gun, a recreation of a traditional dwelling style that was very common in this region. Actually, some people still live in forms of hoe guns on the reservation. This one does have an open air skylight and a fireplace at the center. Behind this yucca, there's a fake petroglyph boulder, which provides some good examples of petroglyphs and pictographs. One of the largest concentrations of petroglyphs in the southwest is somewhat nearby at the obscure Crow Canyon. I do have a video on that. Here is a fork stick hoe gun, a much more rare style of hoe gun construction, but still largely serve the same purpose for ceremonies. There's a U camp set up by the highway. Their homes were also built in that fork stick style, very similar to teepees. And here is a Hikaria Apache Camp setup. This fenced off section of dirt is a waffle garden, which were typical out west. They were usually surrounded by mounds of dirt to help water flow to the plants, because they sure need it out here. And here is a Reproduction Pit House, a large underground shelter very similar to a dugout. This is actually a very large and expansive one. When they were built by the Navajo and other groups around here, they usually did have ceremonial significance, as here is the open air skylight above the fire pit. And there's a mano. That's where I was just inside. It's pretty well camouflaged. Here's some examples of storage cysts, used by the Navajo and others to store their food and other supplies underground. These animal tracks lead to the Ice Age pond, which has definitely dried up since the last Ice Age. But look over there, it's a super real woolly mammoth. Here's a reproduction pioneer trading post. While it appears they have a modern refrigerator in there, 100 years ago trading posts like this were very common in the region for the Navajo and white settlers to trade and sell their goods. Of course, many turned into tourist traps over time. So that was the Salmon Ruins and Museum. Nothing has really changed since the last time I was here, but it was still an incredible place to revisit. This is definitely the most thorough and comprehensive Puebloan ruin location I have visited in the Southwest. They definitely have a lot more information and curation than the national park properties. Though it's not the largest or most important site in the region, they do pride themselves on having the most encyclopedic site. So I would highly recommend visiting Salmon Ruins if you're touring the region. If you enjoyed this video, then please like, share, and subscribe. Also check out my other videos on the local sites such as Chaco Canyon, Aztec Ruins, Mesa Verde, and more. I have also filmed at all sorts of historic sites, museums, roadside attractions, and national parks across the country. Thanks for watching.